learn in elementary school. Not today, but in the rule of basic etymology or basic grammar principles, a child would know in the 8th grade in 1800s. And people today assume that they're more educated because they're not aware of fundamentals which have been held back from them, in fact, etc. And so when you're talking about lex or the law, they think that the law doesn't belong to them. They think that the law belongs to the members of the Bar Association of the British Accredited Registry in England that have a branch operating at North America unconstitutionally as a standard of operations for the execution of due process, when in fact they've been actually operating to the contrary, and actually their missionary work has been to overthrow the republic and not really support the republic, i.e. their major missionary work politically has been to overthrow and violate constitutional principles, not uphold them. And therefore, the members of the British Accredited Registry have been operating here, actually overthrowing the rights of the people and not really presenting or representing the rights of the people. And when that is said, a lot of times the people will get defensive and make ignorant statements that you're against them governing you, when actually, if the people would study even 8th grade level of education, they would recognize that these people are really enemies of the state of order and not actually supporters of constitutional principles, but to the contrary, have actually been overthrowing and subverting the rights of the people and actually been enemies of the law and not supporters of the law. But because they have been enemies of the law, the people think that the law is really hurting them, when actually these people have been operating a color of law, a color of authority, and a color of office, and getting people to actually reject the law and actually think that the law is separate from their history and chronology, when actually they're harmonic partnerships. It's another reason why we're sharing this lesson tonight. And that 8th grade test is a documented testimony of the dumbed down of the people. And sometimes you have to give people, you can tell the people the truth about some things and they won't accept it. So I just use this as an example to show them that truth. And then encourage them to take responsibility, because we all have our work to do in helping to uplift fallen humanity. And when you, this as an example, you can understand statements made by people who have been helping or been working hard to redeem the people from mental servitude, mental slavery. Just as Noble Drew said, I came to redeem you from mental slavery, which you have now. When you understand history, chronology, and lex and jurisprudence, then you can understand why certain statements that he made were made. And you'll also understand why the Moorish Holy Temple of Science was founded as a civic organization to teach civilization principles.
So when you used to hear back in the 1800s or so, when somebody said he only had an 8th grade education.
Yeah, that's
they actually had far more than.
Then you're getting in college now.
Getting in college now.
Now, yes, and this is a demonstration of it. And see, so the example, should encourage people to take serious the reason why this. And what you all see here is only a small. This is a small example of what's over here, what's over here, what's down there, what's downstairs, what's in boxes in the basement, and what you gave away.
Gotta learn.
And it's basic. And then you understand from the motivational point of view, from a negative political dark side democracy principle, why the hybrid Europeans instituted Index Librorum Prohibitorum and Index Librorum Expurgatorius, which is commonly known as the Great Christian Book Burnings. But don't blame that on Christianity, because these people aren't Christians. They've been hiding behind the word Christianity. but they're really Constantinians, operating the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed operations of the hybrid Romans that actually took over ancient Roma, etc., since the Napoleonic Wars, and have been corrupting Asiatic African history on the planet ever since.
There's so many comments here in the comments of people of those who have gone to college or whatever, and they're saying like, I feel stupid, or I didn't get this in college, or I wasted my time. And it's amazing how they deliberately decided, and it's in their whatever their mission statement is, that we're going to dumb them down.
Yes. As a matter of fact, and this is also now again, Dr. Naila, present again Grand Sheikh's Daria's school just for a minute.
You put the banner up?
For to help the people. Yes, please put that up.
Okay.
And for those of you who are seeking some remedy, here is a very, very, very erudite mother and empress who've been working for the nation for decades, and one of the primary people who was one of my teachers too over the years, Grand Sheikh's Daria Bey. And she started a school years ago online to start bringing remedy to a lot of the injury that has been done to our children. Name her school, please.
Moorish School for Children. It's the online schooling for MoorishChildren.com.
Mm-hmm. Now, in response to the injuries done to the Moors, or what you would commonly be told to hide it, they'll just say indigenous people. That's a way so they don't have to, because that's a designation. Keep in mind, that's not a pedigree name. That's a social political designation. So rather than say the Moors or the Americans, the true Americans, they'll just say the indigenous people or Indians. So for them to attack the Indians, true people of the lands, they set up the General Education Board by John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates in 1902. And for those of you who are studied, this is particularly after they murdered Winona at Ashokamoxon territory, which you know today as Philadelphia. And people come from around the world to visit where they threw her off the rocks. They call it Lover's Leap. And then they have a statue of her assassination symbolically with a hybrid European holding a sword underneath a flag like this at the base of one of our mounds, which is where they have the art museum at Philadelphia. And you'll see that when you look from the air, the architecture of that whole layout to the battleground, which is now City Hall, which is designed like a mosque, you'll see architecturally, it's just like this. Absolutely is. Bordered by the Delaware River and the Schuylkill River. Absolutely. And at the base of those steps that you see in the movie Rocky Balboa runs up the steps, you'll see a statue called Eakins Oval. Ovary, oval. Ovary, oval. And that statue indicates or is symbolic of the assassination of Winona. And after that murder, assassination of Winona, and they'll have Tammany's statue at the base of Market Street going into the boulevard, etc., with Aquila on his shoulders, etc., just before you enter. And that's her husband. So they'll even symbolize the destruction of the Lenape of this area, Lenape Moors. They'll say Lenape. It's the Lenape. You roll the R because you're dealing with Berber, or what you call Berber linguistic group of Africa. There you go, Northwestern Maxim. Anyway, so let's read the philosophy of the founders of that General Education Board designed for the dumbed down to show you why this 8th grade test is higher than the average college student operating at North
College
America.
graduate
Or university. This is public information available to all readers, including all you parents that keep saying that you love your children and that, we got to make it better for the children. Well, stop it. You just really stop it, because you need to read yourselves. So John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates, and many of you are familiar with that foundation called Gates, who are also to this day trying to poison your children, sticking things in their arms in the name of helping them. Remember the Tuskegee experiments? Then look at the experiments that they're doing to you now and your children. Philosophy. The founders of the General Education Board, John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates, 1902. In our dreams, this is quote unquote, this is their philosophy, this is documented all over the world in all education systems, but they won't read it. In our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. The present education conventions fade from their minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is a very simple as well as a very beautiful one. To train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we will organize our children and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way. In the homes, in the shops, and on the farm. General Education Board, Occasional Papers #1. General Education Board, New York, 1913, page 6. There you go. Common knowledge. They told you what they were going to do. So now you understand why many of you, after I read some of these basic questions that are given to 8th graders in 1895 and 1896 area. This is 1895 of the 8th grade, while most of the people are listening to this broadcast here, the House of Reawakening Minds, and those of you who've been connected to so-called education systems are in debt for educations that don't even equal 8th grade. And that's a fact. And many of you are in debt for life under what they call student loans for miseducation, and don't even know or haven't been made aware that you were actually being dumbed down and put into perpetual servitude with debt that most of you will never pay. Thus, the law does injury to no one. Know the law, know thyself, and go back to those principles of thy ancient mothers and fathers. That's the lesson. And we just gave this to give you a little bit of support and a little bit of encouragement to do so. And doing what we can to whatever humble degree we can here at the House of Reawakening Minds to aid you in that work while you aid us in helping to get this message across to the people of the land and the people of Midgard Earth in the great missionary work of helping to uplift fallen humanity.
You know, I remember when I was young, and my parents invested. You know, the door-to-door salesman would come around with the World Book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Britannica.
We got one right up there that we found, like after going through the Goodwill or wherever we went. But we had the whole set. I mean, it was important. You know, they would buy books. You know what I mean? And I'm talking
and it's
60 years or so ago.
And it's interesting. It's more information in those old Britannicas than the people get in your basic education today. But that's another reason why they made them unpopular and start getting rid of them, because it's also the part of expurgatorius. You know, and people need to be aware of those things so that they can start taking responsibility and putting their effort into civic organizations to restore that which was lost. But thankfully, Shikas Daria Bay has established that online school to get past some of this corruption to help our children and those who are willing to participate in actually doing the work to help uplift fallen humanity and help our children. And I'm grateful to her. And she's very busy. And of course, she's been doing this for years. And so that's just for many of you who would ask, well, is there any place to go? And do they have any more schools? Sure, it's been there, you know, but again, because mainstream news does more to attack the truth or to suppress anybody who's trying to get good work done. They will misrepresent, make satirical statements, do trolling videos, etc., to suppress knowledge, because they've been actually living off the people's birthright and off the people's estate under a platform of false government and fraudulent government and color of law, and actually attacking the law. And thus, when people get injured, people keep thinking that the law is injuring them, when the law does injury to no one. It is actually the lawless who have been pretending to be men of law, who are actually the enemies of that which is enlightenment and erudition, and are actually angels of the dark, pretending to be angels of the light. And you really need to know that. And the battle at Midgard planet, this time, in this cycle, in this Aquarian cycle, is the exposure of all of those frauds that have been governing Midgard for these last few centuries. And again, the knowledge is not new. However, just like Septuaginta in the Bible and the Quran says, you know, Allah will reject those who reject knowledge. The people are destroyed by the day for lack of knowledge. And knowledge goes back to the ancient Sabi or Saba, Sabians, who are the Gnostics, those who hold the knowledge. Then you understand the Gnostic philosophies that are behind what you call Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which all have the same root from those men of the hair like lamb's wool who carry the knowledge, known as the Gnostics. Now, so when people are looking at the ancient African philosophies, most of the time they're looking at some kind of religious ritual only, not knowing that these are actually symbols, or what you call ritual demonstrations and symbolic demonstrations of the workings of nature. And being that humanity is a part of nature, the law is in place for you to construct your life and to have a point of reference. Therefore, the law does injury to no one.
Here's a question here, and they asked it twice, so I don't want it to slip right in. Curtis Ord, can Todd please explain the Parents Patrie Act and how to undo its legal ramifications through private administrative process, please?
This is where the hybrid Europeans operating under the guise of uplifting fallen humanity and the philosophy of Roman order and the members of the Circle Church and Chancery, known as members of the Roman Curia, This would be members of all your secret societies in your modern world, claiming to be your parent. Now, so the administrative processes, they will have many, and usually they will deal with what is known as commercial codes that have been made uniform since around 1986 to 1966 to 1968, when they blackmailed and intimidated the operative government of Texas, which was the last Republic area, in the process of the members of the Circle Church and Chancery overthrowing the Republic at North America, which is the missionary work of the Bar Association, etc., which is also why they don't teach the original Article Amendment 13, sometimes also known as the 1320, the original Article 13 with its 20 sections. Also, why members of the bar, by law, were not to hold any office under the Republic order adopted from Muslim law of the Honesty Confederation of Moors at North America, to do business under constitutional principles, which logically reaches back to all the treaties, etc. Now, so the administrative process, because they've been doing what you call human trafficking, the United States Corporation Company is actually a human trafficking platform pretended as legitimate government, particularly since 1861, with what is known as the Organic Act of Congress, 1861. So because they started, because their missionary work, operative administrative missionary work, is human trafficking, and because humanity is designated as property, surety property, backing the U.S. corporation, private alien, private debt, etc., all things are done in what they call a commercial trade operation. Therefore, the Uniform Commercial Trade or Uniform Commercial Codes, which been operative since 1966 to 1968, and the different administrative operations that were constructed for reclaiming the estate, which in many cases have been actually still misrepresented, to be honest with you, is what those administrative commercial processes are. And for those who study uniform commercial codes, many people have used them to get back to what you would call administrative position of holder in due course of their lost estate, which is what that makes reference to. And so the parens patriae is where the hybrid Europeans cut out the feminine principle, which we talked about earlier. And this is even why
patriae is the masculine.
Yeah,
right?
yes. This is why you see all the popes of Rome are all males, number one, and only in general, until recent years, to pacify the people, they had any Asiatic African blood in it at all, because actually we have been their target under Unum Sanctum operations and the Spanish Inquisition. That's the Inquisition against Al-Andalusia, which we stated earlier. And this is also why you see their gentrification practices that are common, in particularly at North America, with its promotion or exportation around the world, and also with the constant wars against Asia and Africa perpetrated by the hybrid Europeans who've been perpetrating themselves as Americans and going around the world doing things in our name. Again, the promised position from them in their operations, recognizing that the people are becoming conscious or reawakening to their true pedigree, have been the Uniform Commercial Codes as an operative format to counter their parens patriae position of operations of government, claiming to be your parent, etc., and therefore putting the people into a wardship status. This is again for those of you who have gotten the flash drive from Dr. Naila from over the years, do a look at Reversioner as an article to kind of get the concept of getting past some of the offers made by Rome as the people wake up. Because as you all notice, for those who've been doing research, many of the people who have perfected the Uniform Commercial Code processes, as promised by the Roman Curia members, as soon as they perfect them and try to execute holder in due course processes, you see that they don't honor it. And this is again why it's important for people to nationalize and simply not stand as surety, because you can't, not by right, they will not allow the process of people actually capturing the straw man, because the straw, or the man of straw, is the foundation of the operations of the dark side of the priesthood, who have been actually running government on the planet as at large, not just the democracy platform at North America with the corrupted counterpart called the Republican Party, members of the Whiggamore parties, and particularly, and the interesting of the Kansas school test that we talked about. For those of you who are scholars, do a research on the Kansas-Nebraska Act.
I was going to ask you to talk about that.
Yeah, and so that's dealing with a lot of the area and the dynamics that are behind the split of the Whiggamore Party that has later come. Keep in mind, the Whiggamore Party is the hybrid Europeans practice in the UK and in the subdivisional colonial operations at the Maghreb, or North America, or Mexum, pretending to be Moors. This is why when you're dealing with jurisprudence or the law, that they would wear the curly wigs, which they do even to this day in the UK, imitating the Moors, because that's what it was all about. Now, so my position with this has been for Moors to go back to the principles of their mothers and fathers. For any position that's represented by the hybrid Romans for your redemption would always be a deception. And this is, again, for those of who have done research, to take a look at even a hybrid European daughter who mastered the UCCs, and in the process, as promised, took control or got to the point of completing the deck of cards of the UCCs, commercial codes, to become holder in due course of her quote unquote birth certificate. They tried to destroy her in hidden and closed hell, quote unquote, ecclesiastical court. But because the people are more awakened, which is why they weren't successful to how do you say, to neutralize her. However, they never honored her, and they put her through literal hell. You know, that's my comment on the Uniform Commercial Codes, which is why about 15 or so years ago I did that lecture in Connecticut called The Danger of the UCCs. And it is not that it's not a promised position of holder in due course or executor of your estate. Because remember, the fundamentals of the political problem on the planet in these days, and particularly of North America and Aboriginal indigenous people, i.e. the Moors, has been the hybrid Europeans robbing Moorish estates and converting them under and to the jurisdiction of the United States Corporation Company under the guise of legitimate government, when actually it is a political platform of fraud by the demon operators of the Roman Curia under the Whiggamore Party disguised as the Democratic Party, etc. And so above all, I always promote the principle that when Rome makes you an offer or gives you an apple, it would be wise not to bite it. And that to go back to the principles of your ancient mothers and fathers and enforce the Constitution principle, because it goes beyond the Constitution and goes beyond those charters that present the rightful argument for the allodial rights of man, etc. Go back to those principles of your ancient mothers and fathers and enforce them. And when doing so, that the colorable instrumentalities of ens legis created by the hybrid Europeans and the members of the Whiggamore parties, of the corrupt um, dark side Babylonian operations of the hybrid Europeans who've been operating at North America under the guise of legitimate government when they're actually de facto, etc. That in the process of our people, the people of the land nationalizing, they actually begin to kill or choke the bottomry instruments that were created under the guise of law by the hybrid Europeans, etc., and in fact would kill the bonds. And they're commonly known as U.S. Treasury bonds, which are the basis of the operations of the stock market, which is really bonds against the people. That's the bondage. It actually chokes it. Meanwhile, prepare yourself for self-government or the study of lex, etc., or law or jurisprudence, i.e., the science that treats of positive law, which is a disciplined section of ancient Saba or Sabi, sometimes called Sabi, culture, etc., of ancient Canaanite Moabites, etc., the founders of civilization, and redeem your lost estate because it deals with all hereditaments, corporal and incorporeal. And in the process, what it does, it kills the bonds because Romans will never honor right law, for they are operatively the opposite. Thus, the law does injury to no one. Dr. Nail.
Let's see if there are any more questions I haven't heard of other comments.
That's just a reminder. Most of you already know this stuff. We're just redundantly from different angles telling you the same thing we've been telling you for 40 years, truthfully. But the truth doesn't change or pass away, so we keep going back to it. But because more and more people are reawakening, we're just giving them a way to look at what already is. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to recreate the wheel, you need to get on it. Because that's the truth. And on the other hand, you know, when people assume that people who have been governing over your affairs aren't aware of these things, but we're showing you some of these things, including the philosophy page of the General Education Board of those who've been so-called educating you and your children, that they're well aware of what they've been doing to the people. They're not ignorant of it. And also from a motivational perspective, political and social, why they always attack Moors who are wakening up to or reawakening to the truth of their nationality and their birthright. And it ain't religion, it's pedigree, traditions and customs, and your true history and archaic principles of government on planet Earth. That's the truth. And of course, by not knowing it, we've lost our estate. So now let's get back to claiming our lost estate. And this is just simply a part of it. And so we're sharing some of this stuff with you to help in the missionary work so that a lot of time is not wasted on things which are really designed as misdirections.
Here's a question. Will you all explain how to get your babies out of their jurisdiction before age 7, or will nationality itself be sufficient enough? Still got the school up here.
let's look at this.
Yeah.
From the position of the priesthood who have been operating government here and who have been operating the General Education Board. The principle in the Christian Black codes is this: the condition of the child is the condition of the mother. Therefore, to take the children out of the jurisdiction of Rome, the mother or the parent, and this is counter to parentis patre, a counter move, is to nationalize yourself and the children. So nationalization in African culture, coming down from the Berber, or what you call the Berber culture, would be, my people are destroyed by the day for lack of knowledge. Another would be, I hold my hand out all the day long to a hard-hearted and rebellious people who are not called by my name. When they repent from their sinful ways, I will hear from heaven and heal their land, Land. Turn your hearts back to your ancient mothers and fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. That would be the closing of what is known as the Old Testament in the book of Malachi, etc. Another one would be, every man, every woman, and every child must confess their own and worship under their own vine and fig tree. In a political, civil sense, that would be given this fundamental political, social status designation, and it would be called nationalization. That word, nationalization, in a political, civil law sense of lex and jurisprudence, would be nationalization. That would be going back to the principles of your ancient mothers and fathers, preserving Saba, or keeping the Sabbath, holding those principles, customs, and traditions, which is also referred to as the common law that supersedes all legislation, or ens legis, and other legislated law supersedes, which is superior because it goes back to Sabi. That's the truth. And therefore, the law does injury to no one. Why? Because it supports civilization. Therefore, any philosopher or motivational speaker that really want to help the people, they will tell them to go back to those who know law, because you'd go back to those with the hair like lamb's wool, who set the law principles of civilization at Midgard Earth, which are preserved to this day. Problem has been, it's been preserved among others for selfish cause and held back from others, so that those would become the servants unlawful of wicked and selfish MAs, or master astrologers, who have and are members of the Roman Curia, who have actually been supporting the corruption of Rome and not the principles of the ancient Moabites. And therefore, they are referred to as the ruthless ones. And those who keep the law are those who keep the law of Ruth the Moabitess, i.e., grandmother of Yeshua, or what they call the metaphysical Jesus, i.e., justice, the one with hair like lamb's wool, who speaks with a voice of many waters in the book of Revelations. Those are metaphors to give you the ancient Berber culture, or Berber linguistic culture of Sabi. That's the truth. Keep it simple. And of course, this is researchable, and all philosophers know this stuff anyway. They just, most of these people just pretend they don't know, because these basic fundamental truths destroys the BS of many institutions that have been raping the people and stealing the widow's pennies for centuries, pretending to love humanity when actually they've been enemies of humanity. And that's where you see the anthropomorphic Jesus down in the temple, disputing with the doctors of the law. They've been doctoring up the law. And this is why when you mention Lex or the law to people, they keep rejecting it, thinking it belongs to the hybrid, when actually it's the principles of your ancient mothers and fathers that they've been tricking you into rejecting, so that they could rule over you while secretly keeping the law for themselves, and then having you pay them to represent the law in mockery, rather than you presenting the law, which is yourself, which is Islam. I, self, law, am master, and not just some ritual creed. They won't tell. This is why people who know won't tell you that Islam is really a sect of original Copti Christianity. They just called Islam because they were, or how do you say, separating themselves from the blood sacrifice practices of the dark side. That's all. And that's the truth. So when you hear us say Islam, we don't necessarily mean what a lot of people think that we're meaning. We're talking about the truth of divine law, and not a cage to put people in to steal their personalities, but in fact to actually aid them in developing or in reattaching themselves to divine law that's harmonic with humanity at large, and not the secularism that is practiced in the name of religion and dogmatism that has actually done more to do injury to the planet and to the humans of the planet than actually uplifting them. That's why you'll see us use it in an acronym form. That's why it's done, for those who may not understand. And also for those who've been misrepresenting what we've been telling you. There you go.
I think it's interesting to, it would be interesting to discuss the fact of what you and I, over the last, I want to say several months now, not just few months,
Mm-hmm.
The fact that, the modern European is essentially doing what the prophet said they would be doing.
Yes.
Which is,
they're starting to tell the truth.
We've been getting information. I mean, and there's probably some people that a lot of people don't watch or listen to.
Exactly.
And most of our people don't, but we've been getting some intel that is absolutely almost irrefutable, and
it is
actually
irrefutable.
It's confirmational.
Yes.
It's confirmation.
Yes.
It's things that you've been saying and
for 4 years.
Years and years and years.
Yes. And now and as we when years ago, when we started coming down here on a regular basis since 2011 in that area,
yeah.
When I was telling you some of the oral statements of Novodrolli, when he says, "I'm going to make the European tell you the truth."
Right.
Now, and this is what you're making reference to, and what you see taking place actually on the planet, around the planet, you can see why he was known as Prophet Novodrolli. Everything he has said a century ago, really, is manifesting right on time and in time. Now, the deal of it is, and as we talked about years ago, when I started trying, encouraging the people to set up a trust and to start taking control of a trust, even though we knew that a lot of people didn't have a background or proper study, which this 8th grade test will demonstrate. We knew metaphysically that if the people started rejecting Rome and rendering back to Caesar what is Caesar, Caesar means Roman ruler, that's what it means, it's not an individual man, that it would start killing the bond system. We also knew that many people would get frustrated because they've been trained, to this red pill, blue pill thing. Take a pill and it's over. Tell me this and I'll fix everything, and it doesn't work like that. It is really the sincere participation in the reclamation or reversion of a state that actually kills the bond, that actually is the basis that starts unraveling the de facto and fiat or blind faith operations of Rome on the planet today, that has unfortunately put the world in economic, social, and political peril that the people are experiencing today. And again, as you notice too, Dr. Naila, as many of the hybrid European sons and daughters have been even making videos as of late in harmony with what Novodrolli said. They're telling more and more truths about the Republic, about the overthrow of the Republic, about the Organic Act of Congress of 1871, which we've been teaching for years, that many people, even among the Moors who knew this information, who are adepts, were actually attacking active Moors or Great Seal Moors for sharing this information with the public, as if we were enemies of the Moorish Science Temple of America, when actually we're supporting the divine warning by the prophet for the nations. But they only got away with it because the people didn't know or didn't read. But as the years have passed and you see that the people have become more conscious, and then as you can see, many of the hybrid Europeans have lost their estate. Now they're telling the truth, supporting exactly what Novodrolli said they would. And therefore, as you said earlier, confirming what we've been telling the people for years.
And so, I think it's important to not reject the information based on who it's coming from.
The truth is what it is.
The truth is truth.
Truth is what it is. What we always say to people, and what we say, we give people certain points of reference so they can research for themselves. This is the deal. And as we've always said to the people, and this is for years, with the detractors, the trolls, the COINTELPRO operatives, etc., and their powers that they have held over the people in their different letters, organizations, the different P's this and the I this and the NAA that, and all these kind of organizations that the people thought was trying to help them. We always say to them, don't accept what we say. Do the real work, do some research, and prove us to be liars. And if they do, they will become scholars in the process. And what you see, the fruits of that coming to fore. Many people who over the years who were absolute in opposition to the position of reawakening Moors, etc., are now some of your strongest supporters. Why? Because they find out this is the problem of humanity at large. And many of their social, economic, and political problems are the root of this information actually being suppressed. And as you said the other day, Dr. Naila, and I heard you in one of your conversations the other day, truth was being attacked. If someone's sincere, they don't back down when the truth is being attacked. They stand for the truth stronger. And when you see them back up from it, all masks are off, and they're starting to show who they really serve. And this is one of the interesting things about this Aquarian cycle and the energies of Saturn, Uranus, and Jupiter, is that they're exposing people, all of us, for whatever we claim to be. That electrical charge from Uranus is causing everything to be shaken up, and proving and having to prove whatever the claim is. So whatever gods any of us have claimed to be, in whatever capacity we've claimed it, she, they to be, you're going to have to prove it, not because I said so, because divine nature is commanding it of all living things to prove your gods. Now that's the truth. And this is what we're going through. And this is again why all institutions, whether social, political, religious, scientific, or any other discipline, is being challenged. And if you really pay attention to the operations of government at Midgard, everything is broke. Everything is broken, and humanity is